Also, fun fact, it's immune to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage from non-magical attacks, and psychic damage.
That's quite a list.
It keeps going.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Conjure Celestial.
Oh, I grace you from the heavens. I am an angel of some nature. I was going to do the Mormon angel Mironai from the Book of Mormon, but that's a deep cut from a weird niche Broadway thing from the guys that did South Park.
Ah, all right. I thought you meant the actual Book of Mormon.
That is in the actual Book of Mormon,
Yeah,
but I don't think the name is Mironai. I don't remember. It's not important. What is important is that this spell is a sweet spell for clerics exclusively. This is a 7th level conjuration effect for the class. It's got a minute cast time, so you can't like dump this in combat, but you can prep it and then have this buddy along with you for an hour because it's got an hour concentration duration. Range of 90 feet, so you can like plop it somewhere, but because of the minute concentration, that doesn't really matter. Anyway, you summon a Celestial of challenge rating 4 or lower, which appears in unoccupied space that you can see within range. It disappears if it drops to 0 hit points or when the spell ends. Celestial is friendly to you and your companions. Roll initiative for it. It has its own turns. It obeys your verbal commands. No action required by you. If you don't issue any commands, it defends itself. The GM has statistics for it. That's sometimes a lie. In fact, often a lie, because the two of these that exist, one of them is in a random third of a book in the Plane Chase series that you would consider getting. And the odds that your DM has a stat block is very low. At higher levels, when you spell using 9th level spell slot, you're summoned Celestial of challenge rating 5 or lower instead of 4 or lower. So if you upcast this, you can get Pegasus, which is or not Pegasus,
Unicorn.
Unicorn. Thank you.
Right.
Which is kind of notable. This used to be summon Couatl. That was just like what the text of this used to be, right?
Can you not also summon upcaster for Pegasus or
the Pegasus is lower CR than this?
Oh, all right.
So like, no, you don't need to. The CR4 barrier is like 10 creatures in total. There are not many Celestials in this game. It's one of the lesser developed creatures as far as creature types go. Like on D&D Beyond, from all of the things they released, there's like 13. There's 13 in total, and 2 of them are just animals with wings. So like 11 realistically. So
include the upcast. Or
if we bump it up to CR5, we get to add, drumroll please, 2 new creatures. Oh, I'm sorry, 3, 4. Oh my god, 4 new creatures, 5 new creatures. Whoa! But it's a 9th level spell, and it's not going to be like on par with what wizards are doing. Still, you might consider getting a Starlight Apparition, or it's called Rain. I think it's like a celestial cat from Misplaced Monsters. I don't know what that is, but hey, it's another reason to use the Misplaced Monster book, so why not? You can get a Holy Font. I love Holy Fonts. They're giant winged elephants. They're really sweet and adorable and incredible. If you want to go to Ravnica, you can get a Felidar. Those things are pretty spicy. The juice of this, though, if we look outside of Pegasus and 9th level casting, which I think you probably are, I think most characters aren't getting there, and if maybe you're a 13th level cleric and you're like, oh, big final spell, what am I getting? Normally, it's just Conjure Couatl. Normally what you do is you go, hey, DM, can I get a Couatl? And they go, sure. And then they're like, oh, God, that's really busted because it's got 12 spells and a bite attack that poisons things and does bonus damage and causes them to go to sleep, and it can turn into any beast that's CR4 or lower. Just anyone. Or humanoid.
Okay. I don't want to... All right, we've talked about this before. I don't want to belittle the Couatl, but when you go on about its spells, the spells aren't all amazing, and they all seem to lean toward like mind reading and stuff like that. So like, and it feels like it looks like, oh wow, it's got a lot of spells, but how many of them are really that usable?
Okay, if we go with how many spells that I would expect this thing to actually use. So I summoned it for an hour, I've got it for utility, and I got it for combat, right? What do I expect it to do? I expect it to bless everyone automatically, so it's just going to be a bless machine. That's going to happen. I expect it to use Cure Wounds if someone else goes down, so I don't waste my action doing that. It spends its action doing that. That's way more efficient, so that's a fair one for it to have. If I was going to cast Greater Restoration, this does it for me and gives me the 4 Couatl. So in a situation where, like, you need a Greater Resto to cancel out a curse or whatever, you need a Greater Resto to do wish shenanigans down the road, this is a replacement for casting Greater Restoration because this just casts it for you while also existing doing everything else. The at-will detect magic is just a thing that you will always have with this when you want it. That's just good. That's just extra gravy on top of it. Now, it's a ritual spell you could always cast yourself, but this can just no timing restriction, throw up a detect magic. And if you do it in between blesses, it doesn't really care because you get 3 blesses. So there's not going to be a lot of windows where the concentration for this thing's ever going to be a big issue. Detect evil and good is exactly the same window where it's like, this is going to detect undead, this is going to detect a whole bunch of things. This is like a beacon of finding stuff in utility exploration on top of being a monster.
Question.
Answer.
All right. For these detect spells, detect magic, detect undead, whatever, does the Couatl detect it, or can you see the detected stuff through using, you know what I'm asking?
I do. This thing can communicate with you telepathically, so using, I thought it can. Doesn't have some kind of telepathy detect thoughts. Sorry, I can't communicate with you telepathically, but it can detect things' thoughts. But it can communicate with you verbally and be like, there's things over there, friendo, go be a word of those things.
But if it's like invisible creatures or something, then that's not gonna, I mean, it's nice to know that they're lurking around, but you're still gonna have to deal with being able to find them and hit them and all that.
I think knowing its space is what matters, as we've discussed many times when we're discussing the invisibility condition, right? So that's what this gives you good enough.
That's enough, because even if you could see the invisible creature,
it's still invisible to you.
Yep.
So yeah, it does a good enough job at that. This finds aberrations, celestials, elementals, fades, feeds and undead within 30 feet of it all the time, if you want it to. It detects magic all around it. You can just have it alternate between those two while it's exploring, by the way. You can do like toggle evil, toggle magic, toggle evil, toggle magic, and it can just be both at once, kind of. Detect thoughts at will is also just great. It can just like surface read everything. If you're ever going to a social encounter with one of these things, an at will detect thoughts, yeah, sure. It's going to probe everyone's brains because there's no reason not to, because the spell comes back instantly because it's got an at will detect thoughts. Normally you just get like surface level thoughts if you want to be, getting the value of the spell, because it can just recast it. It can go, okay, we're going to interrogate you. I'm going to sit you in this room with my Couatl, and it's going to get your deepest inner thoughts. It's just going to get there because it's a Couatl, and it can do that ad nauseum until it gets what it wants. To say like they all aren't good, if you broaden the scope and horizon of what this thing can do, it ends up playing like a full caster diviner kind of character, which is really good. And that's on top of what it can do in combat that we haven't even touched on that much. So like the bite attack is a +8 to hit, does a D8 +6 +5 piercing, D6 +5 piercing damage, but gives it a con save. If it fails to save, it knocks the creature unconscious.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's got a constrict that does 2d6 +3 and it grapples things. That's not bad. And again, it can turn into every single beast in the game or humanoid that is CR equal to it or less. So every CR4 beast in the game, this also doubles as, right? So like if you go, I really need a shark right now, it's a shark. I really need a bear right now, it's a bear. I really need a winged beast that we can get on top of, because it's agnostic of size, right? It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be small or medium, or it can be huge if it's CR4 or lower. It can turn into that. There's a lot of value packed into that feature. And whenever you start breaking down like just how much you can do with each individual one of the lines on this thing, it's like, oh, this spell's utterly busted because this creature's utterly busted.
Or it could be a human, and so that if you're going into one of those social encounters, a flying snake might draw suspicion, or put people's guards up. But just some dude.
Yeah, just Terry.
Yeah.
Sup, Terry? And he goes, sup, and he just reads your brain. Other fun fact, this thing has true sight 120 feet. It just has that. So every illusion is dispelled to it. Every single invisible creature, it just sees them. So
don't even need to detect magic. Yeah.
It does so many things. But that's the only option you got. You also got Hound Archons. And Hound Archons were added in there's also 2 other ones. I'll briefly touch on those. There's 2 winged things. Winged lion, winged, what's the other one? Winged lion, winged something that doesn't matter. Bull.
Is that the name? Winged lion and winged bull?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
They're from Mythic Odyssey of Theros, so the idea is like big Greek setting, and the winged bull, winged lion are mythical creatures.
Winged snake got a name.
Yeah, it did. I actually am surprised that neither of those are named. They have a whole thing on chimeras, and they don't count as chimeras for some reason, despite being chimeric. Anyway, they're just beasts with wings, and that's just worse than a Couatl, because Couatl is every beast and has wings.
Yeah.
Plus, everything else it does. So you should never ever consider those 2 CR4 options. But the Hound Archon is a little bit more unique. It's an interesting little thing. So it's got an area effect fear around it. Things that start their turn next to it get a save or they're feared by it. It's got a multi-attack, which Couatl doesn't have. So this thing can put out more damage in combat if you want like an attacky ally. It's also got an at-will teleport. It's like a 120-foot teleport. It's going to blink around the battlefield and slash things up. It's pretty cool. I like Hound Archon a lot. I don't think it's better than the Couatl, but it doesn't have to be. The Couatl's, probably you might consider like doing Couatl for generic out of combat exploration is like your default. But if you know you're going into like a lethal encounter and you want a good celestial ally that can provide meaningful damage on top of being a nuisance, why not go with a Hound Archon? It's got lower AC and lower HP, but the end of the world.
I mean, if you're looking for out of combat utility as well, that 120-foot teleport could come in handy.
Sure, it's only it that gets the teleport, but it's still not the end of the world. Same with a 7th level spell, it's pretty fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
Spells Busto. It's really good.
9 times out of 10, you're taking Couatl.
Yeah. I didn't even mention Couatl has shield, like the spell shield. So its AC of 19 is actually an AC of 24 whenever it would matter 3 times a day. This thing it's a brick wall. Monster's gonna run into this thing and it's gonna be like sup shield. And they're gonna be like, well, that thing's got a higher AC than every other member of the player's party. What is that? So, seems good. It's gonna make every single one of your fighters go, oh, wait, how many abilities does that have? Wait, my character sheet has a full like 10 features less than this monster that's attached to a 7th level spell has. What do you mean? It's also fun fact, it's immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks and psychic damage.
That's quite a list.
It keeps going. I just keep going back and I'm like, oh, those are, I should mention that because that's important. Those are good. Man, I'm sorry. It can telepathically communicate with you. It says languages, telepathy 120 feet. It stuck it in languages as opposed to as another additional feature because I guess they're trying to conserve space at that point. And it speaks all languages for the record. At what point do you think I'm just trying to make things up, right? Like, at what point do you just go, is Sam telling the truth, or can Couatl actually do all of these things?
It's starting to like have that Superman problem where it's just so good that it's getting boring now. But yeah, definitely good. Man, I guess this makes it a 5-star, huh? I mean, it's
the Conjure spells are really busted. So yeah, if you summon a Couatl into the game and a DM not expecting it, I mean, this is a 7th level spell, so we're past the tier, and it's not like lots of little enemies. It's still really good. It's either a 4 or a 5. It's probably a 5, right? Like, this thing does so many things. It's every beast in the game. It's got a giant chunk of hit points. Like, it's so good.
So, so many abilities and immunities and spells and all that. Yeah.
It's a whole extra character for a 7th level spell slot. And then you have your 6th and under slots after that just to do what else you want to do. So it's like, do you want to summon a duplicate, really good diviner kind of character for one spell slot? And the answer is almost always yes. And even like, if your DM's like, hey, that's kind of obnoxious, can you not do that? You can still take the Hound Archon and be really happy with it. It'll just feel closer to a summon spell at that point. And that's still not a bad place for a spell to be. The summon spells are probably better than the Hound Archon more often than not, because at that point you're getting 3 attacks with the summon spells, where the Hound Archon's only 2, and there will be considerations for that kind of stuff. So maybe it's a 4. Couatl is really good out of combat predominantly, and then just like a brick wall in combat. It's complicated and messy. I don't know. I'll go with 4. That's final answer. Don't upcast it, probably?
No, probably no, because I don't know. What do you really want beyond Couatl?
Unicorn is worse than it, unless you need a once per day like teleport.
Probably not.
The Unicorn also comes with legendary actions. That could be neat. Although I don't know if Conjure Celestial takes away legendary actions. I don't think it does. It might.
Well, you have sold me on this one. I wasn't super excited about it before, but I'm giving it a 5. That's you sold me on the Couatl.
It's really, really busto.
Yep.
You could take a Hound Archon, or you could take the really busted one.
I'm probably gonna take the busted one.
Yeah, this is another ringing example of like, hey, CR is garbage and not even remotely close to balancing monsters.
No, that's CR4?
That's CR4. That's the same CR as something that is just a 2d6 multi-attacker. With like 5 less AC, less hit points, less everything else.
Well, there you go.
Tell you.
That was Conjure Celestial. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know what you think down in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.